Hey, everybody. Welcome to House Calls, the podcast. This week, Ty and I are talking to our good friend, Hearon Dickson. Besides being his favorite brother-in-law, Hearon is a yoga instructor, co-founder of the Stay Tuned Yoga Studio, and a huge fan of meditation. As you know, we like to talk about wellness, and we've been talking a lot recently about how to keep your body active and how that just leads to a better overall wellness of your life. This episode, we really get into an equally important part of it is the mental activity as well. So how you can challenge yourself both mentally and physically is a big part of what we're learning more and more about and how that leads to a healthier lifestyle. So I know you'll get a lot out of this like we did. Hope you're enjoying the podcast and you're subscribing on wherever you watch on YouTube or Spotify. And if you have any questions or comments and you want to drop us an email, please send it to housecallsthepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, so tonight Matt and I are having a conversation with Hearon Dickson, who is a life expert in everything, particularly in meditation and yoga and other things that we'll get into. So hello, Hearon.
Great. Welcome, Hearon. Thanks for coming. Travel, diet, you do it all. And, quite honestly, when Ty and I started talking about doing this stuff, doing these podcasts, it was a lot about health and wellness and more about like people that are transitioned into different periods of their lives, into different chapters, however you want to break it up. And immediately we're both like, oh, Hearon, there's the guy that's done it multiple times. Hearon is considerably older than we are. You are 84? But
I am soon to be 63.
Okay, close enough. It's just rounding, but I've seen Hearon. It's 60, yeah. But I've seen Hearon go from married with kids, with little kids. That's a different story. To watching his daughters get married. And when I think about you in transitions, besides the stuff we'll get into, but I remember you were. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were like head of sales for your company at one point, and didn't you like shave your head if they hit a quota?
You're talking now, Matt, you're dating all of us here. That was 1998.
See?
Yeah. Yes, we put out a challenge there to our employees and I shaved my head. And you know what? I looked a lot like you.
Yeah, you did.
So Matt, did you reach a quota or you just shaved your head and looked tough?
No, I was just trying to look tough and I'm waiting for Hearon to hire me.
He's trying to be like me.
I am.
I mean, it's
sad. It's sad. But you've always been somebody who's not afraid on the outside to embrace change. And it's been pretty neat to kind of watch you embrace it and go forward. Where do you think that comes from?
Wow, that's a great question.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Yeah. It's funny. So we'll talk, we'll get into a lot of this stuff, but my mom, who died last year, was a no-fear personality. Never met a stranger, very enthusiastic, which I think you'd agree is something that I have, is enthusiasm. Real joy of life. And, she was a person that it kind of amazes me, and we're all right off the bat, we're talking about my mom. But she was a person who woke up every day with, what are the possibilities for today? And everybody's heard the saying, glass half full, glass half empty. I mean, her glass was overflowing. So to your specific question, I think I attributed that to my mom.
Did you always have that, or did you mature into that? Like, do you remember it as a kid or a young adult?
I think one of the things we'll get into here a little bit is kind of putting yourself out there with some of the things we're doing, some of the things you guys are doing right here. But I think that's grown in me as I've gotten older and more, as I've matured, for sure. I mean, all of this was kind of willing to do anything kind of person, but good and bad, candidly. But that's definitely been a big part of this has been that spirit of kind of.
Do you see that in your kids? And since we're here, if you want to say which one of your daughters is your favorite, go right ahead. Ty and I've already Ty and I have done that on a previous episode. Girls have to go back and watch it, but go ahead.
Well, the question I would have for you there is, did either of those daughters listen to the episode?
I can't say.
So, yeah. Yeah, no, I think my kids do have that. To varying degrees and in different ways, right? So, yeah.
So as we get into it, so I think of you as a yoga instructor who has interest in meditation, those kind of things. What were your thoughts? When were you first exposed to that? And what were your thoughts when you were first exposed to it? Like way back, your earliest memories.
So I have to tell this story, and it's not a super short story, but
That's good.
That's
We
fine.
like stories.
Yeah, we like the longer the better, please.
I went to my first yoga class ever in January of 2012. So I was 50 before I ever went to a yoga class. And a coworker of mine said to me, hey, you should try yoga. And I went to this class, and Matt, you can relate to that because you do a lot of yoga. Never been to a yoga class before. It's like January, it might even have been January 1st. Class was at the YMCA. I don't know better, so I get there on time, which means I'm the last one there. Packed room, right? January, New Year's resolutions and whatnot. So I'm right in front of the teacher, absolutely packed room, no clue what I'm getting into, and I'm coming off a really tough year in a lot of ways. Personally, business-wise, just coming off a really tough year. And we sit down, and the yoga teacher says, breathe in your hopes and dreams for the new year. Breathe out everything from the prior year that will no longer serve you. Life-changing moment.
There it is.
I was hooked. So started doing yoga. But that comment that she made really kind of set me on the path. So started doing a lot more yoga. And for that's 2012, we moved up here to Annapolis full time in 2018. For the next 5 or 6 years, just started doing a lot of yoga, mostly for the physical benefit of the yoga at the beginning.
So when your coworker first recommended it, was it because he or she knew you had a hard year, or were they like, man, he can't touch his toes?
One for one. Another great question. In hindsight, I think she was, you need help of some kind. I think this is something that would help you. In hindsight, at the time, I took it as, again, January, New Year's resolution, new exercise deal.
What were you doing for fitness like at that time? Because you've always been active. So were you doing?
Well, I was a pretty avid runner until 5 years ago, quit doing that because I've long recovery time, which you know all about in your profession. But I've always been very active, yes. And my main source of exercise was running or in bad weather, stationary bike or running on a treadmill or something. Which I still do, by the way. I still go to the gym and ride the bike and all that stuff.
So you get exposed to yoga, and you're 50 years old, you're finding something new, you're into it. How does that snowball or evolve into other parts of your life? And is it yoga based that this all happened, or was that the seed?
So doing a bunch of yoga. We move up here to Annapolis. Lisa Cumberpatch had just done yoga teacher training. Close friend for 40 plus years. She says to me, you should do yoga teacher training. I'm like, me? And, it's yoga teacher training takes a year at least, unless you travel somewhere and do it, very intensive. So she mentioned that to me right when we first moved up here, 2018. I was doing, this is relevant only in the context of her recommending it to me. I was doing some sort of peer counseling stuff for people at the time as a volunteer thing. And so it sort of meshed and kind of helping other people. And so she said, hey, you should try yoga teacher training. I'm like, again, me. So I sat on it for a year. But in that year, I really started doing a lot more yoga. I mean, I was kind of like became you, like Matt Waldron, just doing really into it completely.
Yeah.
All in. And the seed was planted. So I then did the yoga teacher training, it ended. Also, another important part of kind of what I've done with it since then, it ended in April 2020, my yoga teacher training.
Right there.
Everything shut down, right? The studios were shut down.
That was when COVID hit and the world shut down. You were asleep during that.
Oh, the year there was no lacrosse season.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the,
Okay.
yep.
Okay.
So I finished in April 2020. We're 3 weeks into COVID or whatever, a month into COVID.
Right.
No yoga studios were shut down, and that's how I started teaching here where we live.
Right.
We have a nice outdoor space where I could teach. That's where I first started teaching. But kind of getting back to your question, when I did the yoga teacher training is when I got exposed to yoga philosophy, which led into my very keen and newer interest in meditation. And it's kind of snowballed from there. And I've done a lot of study. It's still,
right.
I'm taking a course right now in yoga philosophy. I mean, that's my thing.
That's your
So
thing.
are there any people who they might be yoga teachers or get into yoga, but it's just a way to stretch for them? Or do you find that most people go into the philosophy of yoga?
You talking about teachers?
Teachers. Yeah, teachers. Like, I was first exposed to yoga. It was one of the days in P90X, the exercise class. And basically on Sundays, there was an hour and a half of yoga. And he would always be like, it's just ohms. It's just stretching. It's not anything, that you have to believe in or anything. And I always thought that was interesting versus the perspective of actually learning everything you can about the history of yoga and all the variants and all the spirituality parts of it.
Matt, you were getting ready to say something.
Oh, no, I was just, all I was going to say is it really depends on the person, right? What they're looking for. It could be purely athletic, or it could be searching for, as you said, that yoga philosophy that they're looking to grasp into, but it changes, I think.
Yeah. And so in my teaching, so the class I do here, which is all men, and my sense from them, with pretty rare exception, is they want to stretch. They want to find a way to hit a golf ball further. They want to keep their back limber. I go very, very, very light on the yoga philosophy with them. I teach other classes where the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes have something to do with yoga philosophy. So I think, at the risk of this coming across wrong, I think good teachers know their audience and know, which audience kind of just wants to stretch and which audience is there for a little bit more, and you've got to just kind of mix it right.
That's spot on, I think. You just got to be able to read the room and read, and that's not just in yoga, that's just about everything. And we already mentioned that you've got daughters and you have a couple of son-in-laws. And sidebar, I've always thought that, think about like your girls going home to meet the future husband's parents, and they're like, oh yeah, her parents are great. The mom's a lawyer and their dad's a yoga instructor. Two totally different. And they're probably, what the hell are we walking into here? But it works because it's who you are. And it's great to watch.
And I'll be honest about this. It's fun to talk about. I mean, I love talking about it. And I love talking about it to people who I know will be surprised that's what I do, because it's pretty unusual, right? Not me, Ty.
Was there any issues with confidence to put yourself out there as a teacher?
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I still have it at times, depending on circumstance. And, incidentally, side note, because, I know Ty and Matt, I know a lot of your audience are kind of young adults that we know. So any of those people listening to this, that would be my one piece of advice to them. Put yourself out there.
Absolutely.
Find something you're interested in, figure out a way to swallow the fear and put yourself out there. But yeah, no, I was terrified. And again, depending on sort of where I'm doing it or what the audience is, I get butterflies before every class. And I think that keeps you sharp, though. I mean, that's
I mean, in all honesty, that's how we got to this, right? Ty and I like having these conversations with
Yeah.
ourselves, and we're like, hey, let's just open them up a little bit. So
Right.
it's, the same thing, and in those conversations, much like this, Ty talks the whole time, and I just have to say yes, but it's okay. But, Heron, so we're talking about you getting into this teaching, role, which has been fascinating to watch. I went to one of your very first classes, and it was so right? It was patient. It was slow, but in a good way. And, it was good cues and things like that to help, because you had a lot of newbies. They've never even seen yoga before, but they wanted to support you, which is always pretty neat to watch. But go back before 2012, other transitions, other things that helped you kind of get into taking this big step into this world. I'm trying to figure out when you joined my team.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So listeners may have listened to Matt's podcast about being sober. I also am sober. I've been for 10 years. And that would be my other kind of piece of advice for anybody watching is if you are worried at all about the role of alcohol in your lives, there are two guys on this thing right now. Take your call. Love to talk to you about it. But again, Matt, that's hindsight for me.
Right.
In hindsight, I mean, what I didn't say, I knew we would get to this. What I didn't say about that January of 2012 was that, my drinking was off the rails, which was part of it for sure. Part of the bad year in 2012. And again, that's hindsight. And yoga has been very, very, very instrumental in that journey for me. It's a large part of my spiritual foundation. I actually have a certification to teach what's called Yoga for 12-Step Recovery. I'm not currently doing that, but I've offered that before, and that's sort of a combined yoga class and sort of typical, what anybody's seen on a TV show, kind of typical recovery meeting type format.
So when you told me about that class, and I'm long time sober, don't go to meetings that much anymore. Just not part of my spirituality right now. But it's always nice to know it's there. But it was fascinating to me when I looked at the 12 steps after you told me about this class and how the steps of alcohol, AA, how they correlate so easily into yoga. And I never even put the two together until you brought it up to me. And then you start thinking, and it's acceptance and learning to forgive and making amends and things like that. And you're like, oh my God, that's not just for alcohol or yoga, but that can go in so many different ways. It's really kind of eye-opening for me.
Yeah, it is interesting. So Ty, getting a little bit back to your question about meditation. Here I go again on a tangent a little bit, but meditation is a form of yoga. So there are 8 limbs of yoga, and one of those is meditation. One of those is asana, which is movement, which is what everybody associates with yoga. But there's the yamas and the niyamas. I'll get back to that in a minute, and I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds. Third of those is asana, movement, and it progresses. Meditation, breathing, concentration, and it ends with sort of enlightenment. Okay. What Matt's referring to are the yamas and the niyamas, which is sort of code of conduct, honesty, non-stealing, non-violence, things like that. And they really do marry very well with 12 steps of the traditional 12 steps, Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever else. And incidentally, quick plug here. I'm on a meditation app called Insight Timer. And I just uploaded a course, 12-day course, that is on the 12 steps, marrying a step of Alcoholics Anonymous with part of yoga philosophy.
So when you started doing yoga, was it immediately that you realized, was it pretty quick there was a mental change that you were finding some kind of stress reduction with it? Or was it something that you had to practice before you saw that mental benefits?
So I told you the story about sort of breathe in what you want for the new year, breathe out what will no longer serve you. So
Right.
that was the foundation. I'll tell you how important that is to me. Whenever I teach a brand new to me class, I tell that story. And kind of getting back to what I was saying about knowing your audience, regardless of the audience, I tell that story because I think that's just how important it is to me. Interestingly, though, I think, and maybe I'm just not that smart, but that what I just said about the meditation has come fairly recently. If you think back the last 12 years, the last 13 years of being a yoga practitioner, that meditation piece has been at the tail end of that. And
So
that
what does that
now
mean?
I've gotten more deeply into it.
So for a novice, what does it mean, the meditation? I mean, you think of the stereotypical memes of of a guy sitting there cross-legged, just going, is that meditation? I mean, what is it for you?
So one other thing I'll say first, and again, this is over a 13-year period, this is a relatively new realization for me, or awareness for me. The purpose, so the limbs of yoga are progressive. They start with code of conduct, and then end with enlightenment. I mentioned this earlier. The third of those is physical movement of yoga, asana. The purpose of the physical movement of yoga, the purpose is so that your body can sit still for an extended period of time. That's the purpose. Now, we've added all kinds of other stuff to that. We already talked about stretching and whatnot, and that's great. But within the confines of yoga philosophy, that's the purpose. The purpose of doing all the movement is so your body can sit still. Definition of meditation is a continuous flow of ideas on a single sense object. So all of your attention on one thing. So stereotypically, that's the breath. So what does it mean for me? What I try to do every single morning before I do anything else is for 5 minutes, sit and just breathe. And I'm a human being. My mind wanders. Some days, so there's a belief, and this I challenge anybody to try this. There's a belief that if you count your breath, so count to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 cycles of that is advanced. Sounds like nothing, right? Try it tonight.
Right. Yeah,
Count to 10 3 times with your breath without anything else coming in. And it's hard. So what it does for me is it stills me, it calms me, and then hopefully, over time, it makes me, you comment that I'm patient, and thank you for that. But again, I'm a human being with flaws that we all have. Hopefully it makes you kind of more patient, greater equanimity.
Right.
So for somebody listening, they might be like, oh, I could use a little calm in my life or a little silence in my life. And they were a beginner, but they're not quite brave enough yet to say, hey, I'm going to call Hearon and go to a class or something. How would you tell them to get started? I know there's apps, things like that.
So first of all, there are scientifically validated benefits of doing it for 1 minute. So what I would tell that person is tomorrow morning when you wake up, or tonight before you go to bed, notice your breath. See if you can count to 10. Get your breath to 10, and 3 times is what you're trying to do is 3 cycles of 10. And so that's what I mean. In basic terms, that's what I would tell them. Give yourself 5 minutes. See if you can put all your effort on your breath.
And now there's other techniques also, like you could say a mantra, which is just a statement, right? Or you could just sit there and notice that your thoughts are thoughts.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Well, I'm rereading, Breath right now by James Master.
That's a great book.
It is, because I feel in my yoga practice, I know my core breathing is limiting me. I'm not getting everything out of it because I'm not breathing correctly. And it's so funny to think that you have to learn how to breathe correctly. But as you said, the scientific benefits of that are just amazing.
Yeah, and so there's kind of 4 main types of meditation. There's breathing. There's insight meditation. A lot of people have heard of that. That's kind of the most typical form of that is body scanning. Okay. So you start at the top of your head, and you literally head, eyes, cheek, jaw, throat, shoulder, elbow. You just literally count down the parts of your body down to your tips of your toes. There's loving kindness,
Right.
which is my personal favorite. And it's sort of a concept. And my mind's drawing a blank. Gratitude, thank you.
So a little disclaimer also is that this doesn't have to interfere with any religious life that somebody has.
Absolutely.
And could actually even be strengthen somebody's religious life. Like a lot of religious traditions are forms of meditation or forms of mantras, things like that.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm not Catholic. A person that I've taught meditation to was explaining to me that what she does is, this is embarrassing, rosary. Is that the?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's what she does in those moments.
Right.
Matt, was talking about that breathing. What I do is the breathing thing. What she does is recite the rosary. It's the exact same thing. It's just centering yourself, concentrating on one thing, which over time can clear the clutter out of your mind.
So to get to the physical part of yoga, because there is an orthopedic related aspect to these talks. And first I want to mention that if you're doing the yoga and the meditation, your stress levels are going to go down, and having decreased stress is going to decrease chronic inflammation in your body, which is what really leads to most of the things we're seeing in orthopedics. But what physical benefits did you see from yoga? So you're 63, you still move great around the tennis court, you still can go for runs. Are you physically better off now than you were at 52?
Absolutely. I'm also taller than I was at 52.
Hold up, Matt. Just try to relax. I don't want to get Matt's hopes up.
This could be it. I got eligibility left.
And is it true you grew hair from yoga?
Oh,
that's bullshit.
In 1998, I was bald.
Oh my God.
So this is true. So my dad is 93.
Oh my goodness.
He is a lot shorter than he was 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And Ty, you're the doctor, but I'm, progression, right? So you shrink. And in the year that I started doing a ton of yoga, between my 2 annual physicals, I was 1.5 inches taller.
Stop it.
But not.
Wait, was that
not
because you grew your hair
my-
out? Wait, the first time you go bald and then you grew you're like Fletch?
Not beyond my record height, just kind of back to that. Now, the orthopedic surgeon might be dismissing that, but I mean, now,
So wait, let's back up. When you're doing this is somewhere down in the sticks in North Carolina, right? So
Sure.
we really can't verify this. Okay. All right.
Fair. So, but Ty, two things I stress a lot in yoga classes, particularly, so many of the people I teach are men and or beginners and or approximately my age. So 2 things I stress a lot are spinal mobility. So your spine moves 7 directions. It extends, it twists both directions, side bends both directions, and then front and back, right? So I try to do that in every single class and, kind of jokingly say that spinal mobility is the fountain of youth. And then the other one, very important for people my age, and you youngsters are not quite there yet, but the other very important one is balance. So we always work on balance in every yoga class.
So do you think those would be helpful for, I don't want to just limit this to, yoga, but how about people that like to sail and drink bourbon and that kind of stuff? Do you think that would help them, to kind of be a better sailor? Or maybe if they moved their back a little bit, had some balance? I'm just asking for a friend.
I think it could be beneficial.
Okay, that's all. Moving on.
So I think, and I'm going to direct this question towards Matt, but I think a lot of people, the first time they get into yoga is actually because they want to be limber for the sports they play. So like Matt and I were both runners. And when I first started doing yoga, I kind of started noticing that my runs were slowing down a little bit. I was getting stiffer and my gait was shortening. And that's why I started doing yoga. And I think, Matt, you were the same thing, right?
Yep. That and looking for a sense of community, looking for to get out of the house. I started working from home. True story. My wife and her best friend took me to a yoga class. And in the middle of the day, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm working from home. I'd like to get out and try something new. And it was a hot yoga class. That was like 8 years ago. They've never gone back because they said I ruined it for them because I sweated too much and moaned too much. And I hadn't stopped. Yeah, I've definitely seen the benefits. And it was originally, I thought maybe I'd start stretched out. My legs would move better. I'd feel better after running, help hit the golf ball better, things like that. And next thing I know, it's like, I'm not even thinking about that stuff. It's more about, as Heron was talking about, more of the individual challenge now of the many facets of yoga that I get motivated by.
So the orthopedic point is that it is very nice when you have patients who have done some yoga, because say they have a mild back injury or they've recovered from a back injury, and you're trying to explain to them a program that can keep their back healthy. And if you say, hey, have you done yoga? And if they say, no, I haven't, then it becomes a longer thing. But if they've done yoga, you can be like, all right, this is what I want you to do. I want you to do child pose every morning with upward dog, downward dog. Maybe you want the spinal twists. You're good to go. That you can get benefits from yoga, especially orthopedically, just doing 5 to 10 minutes of it from a bone and joint perspective.
Absolutely.
Well, I've been trying it, and I'm still 5'9", but I'm gonna keep at it though, because I haven't heard. That's the first I've ever heard of beat getting taller from yoga. But good for you. But I got to check those records. So, Heron, what talking about the physical benefits, the mental benefits, what was harder for you to embrace, or did you see a bigger, I don't know, the bigger jump physically or mentally or both, or what do you look for it now? Is it more of a mental challenge for you now that gets you going, or the physical?
I think, so it's interesting. I've just restarted going to yoga classes as a student. And, that's kind of like a no-no, is to not do that, which for probably 2 years, I didn't go to any yoga classes as a student. What I've gotten out of it since I've started going back pretty regularly as a student is, first of all, learning things as a teacher. When I'm teaching, I'm not always practicing. Hopefully I'm practicing a very little bit. It, of course, depends again on who the audience is. If they're beginners, they need to model me. If they're experienced, I can talk. They don't need me to model for them. So as a student going to a yoga class, what I get out of it is the physical. But sort of my journey is more the mental sort of aspect of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I get that.
The other comment I would make, because like we mentioned, we might have some younger listeners. What I see frequently is kids who aren't very flexible, but they're athletes, and their moms are always like, I'm trying to get them to do some yoga, and they blow it off. And I truly believe that if you increase your flexibility, and yoga is a lot of hip flexors or hip flexibility, you will become faster and you will become more resilient to injury. So and a lot of college sports teams do some yoga. So if you're that high school kid and you can't touch your toes, you are going to get hurt if you hope to play sports in college or beyond. But also, if you need to increase your speed, yoga does that.
And what I'd add to that, Ty, is, I'm making a broad generalization here. The people who have come to my yoga classes and have not liked it were looking for more of a workout. Okay? They're looking to spend an hour pretty quiet, kind of stretchy. First of all, it's not everybody's thing, right? But, what I would, not to give you the doctor advice.
No, give me advice.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
What I would also say to those people is, it's not a workout. Also, if you need to pump iron or run 6 miles or whatever else it is, also do that. But get the benefit of the stretching and the quiet out of the yoga for the yoga's sake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it can be used as a great recovery tool. Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah, for everything else you want to do, athletically or not athletically, you got to be limber and you want to be able to have a fresh mind and fresh body and to be able to move forward. So no, that all lines up correctly in my eye. And I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we age, and I mean, Ty, this is why you're doing this, and I applaud you for what you guys are trying to do. But as we age, I mean, you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving, and it doesn't have to be marathon.
Yeah, and you got to keep learning new things.
Right. That's some of the stuff we like talking about is community, right? Not our community, but the community that you surround yourself with. And like you said, the younger person that isn't getting the full workout out of the yoga class they're looking for, that's all right. They're out there. Trust me. Call me. I'll tell you where they are. But the community that you have kind of built or have kind of you and Lisa have kind of put together, it's pretty special, right? And it motivates you in a different way, and kind of like the challenges and stuff like that. It's not just family, it's not just people but they're like, oh, I want some of that, and if I know my friend's doing it, I'm going to try that. It's commend you and Lisa for putting together that community.
Well, thank you for that. And I mean, it blows my mind because I never dreamed I would be doing this, first of all. Lisa and I started this business. Irony, I mean, just incredible irony, is it came out of COVID and nowhere to teach. And I said to her one day, I said, I think we can do this on Zoom. Continuing to this day, she and I both teach 2 classes a week via Zoom.
What's the business? Ty has no idea.
It is Stay Tuned Yoga.
There you go. A little plug.
And we, I mean, it's a business. We teach 4 classes a week. We will in 2025 take 3 international retreats. We're going to Costa Rica, Croatia, and Montenegro. Just before this call, I had a call we work with a travel company. We're doing 4 trips in 2026. I mean, it's wild,
Is there a studio or a location, or
it's all via Zoom?
It's all via Zoom. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heron's in all these great spots and going, suckers, enjoy the 13-degree weather in Annapolis. Have fun.
I
need a little less
maybe.
up here.
What? You know what? So, truthfully, though, I was in Cabo last week and taught via Zoom my 2 classes that I teach every week virtually.
So, because you are a little bit older than us, but we're not too far behind, I want to get into that, like, not retirement, kind of you're still working, but you're not doing what you were doing before, plus kind of the empty nester phase. You've been in it for a while. I just got in it. Matt is about to be in it in a year or 2. What have you found? What have you liked? What surprised you? What did you totally expect? That kind of thing.
And does your wife still talk to you?
She's here. So, yeah. Yeah, she does. She's my number 1 yoga student. She attends pretty much every class I do that is virtual.
Do her brothers do all the virtual classes?
No.
Okay.
It's shocking. That is shocking. That's they probably don't have internet or something. But anyhow, move on.
I like our chances of getting at least one of those to watch this episode. But
if there's bourbon at the end of it, they may be somebody well.
How is your transition going, Ty? Empty nest.
Well, I think it's going great. We still have number 3 who's done college and is living with us for now. But it's been great. I think the biggest thing is they're home way more than you think. I think the bigger thing with me was I kind of had work, and then I was always coaching my kids in sports, and then always kind of going to sports. That freed up a ton of time. That I was like, okay, how can I use my time usefully? I don't want to just watch Netflix. I could only work out so much without being exhausted. And that's why I started picking up other hobbies and was like, hey, Matt, do you want to talk to me once a week on Riverside or Zoom? And he was like, yeah, but could we invite somebody else so it's not just you? telling 1980s lacrosse and wrestling stories. And then that's how the whole podcast idea started. It's really just to entertain me and Matt.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm honored to be here, really. I think, I apologize because it's the third time I've used this statement, but I think in hindsight, first of all, that tough year I mentioned, it was on the heels of the first year of empty nest. Who knows what connection that was to it, but it was there, right? But and I know you are too, both of you, I'm just a huge proponent of having interests, having new interests, as we just were talking about, lifelong learning, and, getting out and doing some stuff. Ty, you've mentioned, Matt, you've mentioned a couple of times community, meet some new people, get exposed to different things. I think that's an important part of the aging process. I'm kind of in the next phase of empty nest, if you will. I mean, my, 3 daughters, Matt and I have just all these crazy similarities here, but
too many.
But 3 daughters, my youngest daughter is 32. They're big time adults, right? They're not like legal adults. They're adults. So,
Matt did not become a real adult till he was 47. So,
true story.
Yeah,
I got a certificate actually.
Some of us never hit it. So, congratulations.
Oh, it's a big day.
Have your kids noticed a change since you've been doing yoga and meditation and those kind of things, or is it just maturity?
Oh, wait, man.
Big question.
Well, so let me answer the maturity thing first. I frequently, in conversations with younger parents, parent of a 13-year-old, what I ended up saying is maturity cures a lot of that, right? Your kids' maturity solves a lot of their issues, right? I firmly believe that. I think, again, I'm a human being, and your family sees all your flaws, right? So, Matt, this summer you'll have to ask them that question. But I think they've seen me kind of calm down. I can remember, now I'm getting a little bit poignant here and a little bit personal, but I remember a few years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, kind of had one of those family dust up situations, and I'm feeling bad. And I really got very, very, very upset. I said to one of my daughters, I said, man, if I'd worked so hard on all of this, and, this is still the reaction that I elicit, what am I doing this for? Kind of thing. And she gave me some very positive affirmation that I needed to hear at the time. So, but again, I stress I'm a human being. So my flaws are still there. I just think I have a better capacity to recognize them and work on them.
So with the yoga, but particularly the meditation, you're basically working on your mind.
Correct.
And your oldest daughter is a psychiatrist, so an MD who's studying the mind. Do you guys have any conversations? And does she have any exposure to yoga and meditation, which tends to be more kind of like Eastern medicine compared to Western medicine? Do you guys ever talk about that? Any special insight?
Not enough. And thank you for asking the question to prompt. Actually, I'm going to see her in New York next week, so I'll be prompted. Thank you for prompting.
This can be your dinner time conversation.
Yeah, this is it. We take care of everything.
She, as you well know, not to overstate the obvious, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. And my sense is, appropriately, she's seeking medical solutions for medical psychiatric issues, right? Hey, that's a conversation I need to have with her.
Yeah, just call us. We'll help. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Fascinating. Are they into the yoga? I know they're runners and things like that, but are they into the yoga for the same reasons you're into the yoga, or are they for different reasons if they are?
They're casual yogis. My younger two, will do it when I urge them to, or it's a special occasion or whatever, getting back to the advice to the orthopedic patients and maybe do yoga and your run or your weightlifting. My oldest daughter, who's a psychiatrist, is a fairly elite runner still. And that's her therapy, right? I mean, she's not wired to want to sit still for that hour. She's wired to be moving. And she, by the way, I'm very confident she would say and agree that she gets that meditative state at whatever point it is of her runs.
Have you noticed that people who really start a regular yoga practice, it goes hand in hand with being more mindful of what you eat? I'm throwing you a curveball, but it seems like it draws people to need more nutrition and kind of eliminate some of the junk. Not saying they're perfect, but they do seem to coincide.
I'm going to answer a little bit of a different question.
Yeah, the one you thought I was going to ask?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't have those conversations with them about what they're eating. Okay, but I get all the time, wow, I feel amazing. I need to eat this, or this. Drink less, eat less ice cream. I get that all the time. I feel amazing. I need to do the next thing, whatever that is.
Yeah, because I think, like you said, it goes hand in hand. Like once you start getting into something and you're like, oh my goodness, you know what? I got to do a big yoga class in the morning. I don't want to eat too much tonight. Like, oh, it went better than if I didn't do it that way. So yeah, it's just trial and error, but definitely a part of it.
Right. And people, I get a fair amount of these. I teach a class in downtown Annapolis that is, the name of the class is Yoga for Reluctant Men. And I mean, the average age is probably 70 years old. And some of these guys are not in shape. And it's really amazing to see how motivating it is to them just to move their bodies for an hour. And, hopefully that springboards into other lifestyle things.
Can you touch on modifications? So say Matt's really experienced. I have a little bit of experience, a beginner who might have some injuries or some, areas where they had surgery or something like that. Do you have modifications designed to every class so anybody could do it?
Absolutely. I'm a sort of half tongue in cheek on your Instagram reel without doing the sort of the half push up on the railing. And that's a modification. I'm a huge believer in modifications. Use blocks to bring the floor closer to your hand. Don't use your knees. Don't try to touch your toes. You put a strap around your feet and hold the strap. I'm a huge proponent of that.
Yeah, so you just got to get out there and start doing, and whatever gets you going. That's the way to go.
So Matt,
still not a doctor.
Yeah, but you have the big life questions.
I do.
So what do you got?
Hearon, talk to us. What was the best book you read last year, 2024? I'm sure you were away last week. You might have read something already, but this is stick with 24.
Bet like all in the best book I read.
Yeah, in the last year or so.
I'm a pretty big reader.
Yep.
In the book that I am telling people I like the most last year has nothing to do with any of this. It's called The Bee Sting.
Bee Sting?
The Bee Sting.
Okay.
And it's a family dysfunction novel that takes place in Ireland.
All right. That's pretty solid.
I took getting back to the sort of the topic, and I'm happy to talk about books. I bring me back on and have a book club. The sort of the book about yoga, the document about yoga is called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And actually took a 6-month-long course on that last year and got so much out of that, I'm actually taking it again this year.
Wow.
So that's about 30 minutes a day for 6 months studying this book, studying this.
Because that's interesting. I asked Ty that same question, and it was a book about LeBron who? James last year? Yeah, whatever. But it was like 8 pages, and anyhow, but whatever. See, I'm hanging out with the wrong people. Got to hang out more with Heron. Here's the other one. What's your last meal? Not the last meal you had today, but if you know tomorrow, what's the last day?
I was about to say, Matt's new to this podcast co-hosting thing.
Well, Ty's like, that's gonna be
He doesn't get paid much.
Wow, what a great question. That's something I've never thought about. I love pizza. That would probably be pretty high on the list. I'm not like a steak and potato guy. It's not really my thing.
What's your topping?
So let's talk about health for a second. I had for the past 5 years this alpha gal allergy. Have you guys heard of that? You need to know about this. It's a tick-borne allergy to red meat.
Yeah, I have heard of that. Yeah,
me too.
So I've had that for the past 5 years.
Oh my goodness. So you can't eat any red meat?
I just got retested after 5 years, and I've been re-cleared to eat red meat.
Okay.
And we're diet. Here you come. Let's go.
We'll go. Red meat is a gateway drug. It leads to French fries and milkshakes and stuff like that. But so I'm back on red meat.
Okay. Which is interesting. You were only joking, but some of the original studies about red meat, the problem was they weren't accurate because the people who were eating red meat were also smoking cigarettes and having French fries and having all the junk because they were telling you red meat was bad. If you actually isolate red meat's fine. It's anti-inflammatory. It's good for you. Because you're the community yoga guy, if somebody sees you out eating pizza, do they ever say, what are you doing? I thought you were vegetables and fruits only. Like, do they, or do people leave you alone?
Well, they leave me alone. But what I would say is moderation in all things.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Which I struggle with that concept, getting back to the earlier part of our conversation, but moderation in all things. And interestingly, Ty, alcohol is the same way as it relates to these studies. 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of studies, a couple glasses of red wine is good for you, this, that, and the other. That's swinging back around a little bit in terms of the ingestion of ethanol into your body. And I read a fascinating thing just last night about how the population that they're measuring this means a lot. And the people who, the main study that said, hey, 2 glasses of red wine every night is good for you, the main people studied were of a certain socioeconomic place where they also had a gym membership. Right? So, take these things in isolation is tough. Anyway.
And for people who are more interested in that, the neuroscientist Andrew Huberman on his podcast, Huberman Lab, has a really good episode on alcohol and debunking some of those studies. And he's not preaching, he's not lecturing you, but he's saying, alcohol is a toxin to your body. So don't trick yourself that he's not telling you that everybody has to be sober. He says drink in moderation if drinking in moderation works for you. If you can't drink in moderation, don't drink. But he does want you to know, don't trick yourself that it's good for you. Yeah, so if anybody's listening and wants to know more about that. And then, Matt, what was the other one? Who's your foursome?
That's right. What's your dream foursome?
Well, let me see. Matt Waldron, Ty Howe. I looked up Chuck Baldecki.
Yeah.
I have no offense to you guys. I have an unusual name, right? So Hearon is my mother's maiden name. My first name is Fanning. So Hearon's my middle name. And there are 4 of us. There were Fanning Hearons, my uncle and 2 cousins. And we and another cousin who doesn't share the name for years had what we called the nephew open because my uncle was Fanning Hearon. And that was just really was a wonderful way to, keep the family together and do stuff with family members.
Heron, speaking of golf, have you ever witnessed a hole-in-one?
I have.
Really?
I have.
Did not know that.
I've seen two holes in one. One, some stranger that, I hope to never see again. And one by one of my heroes in life, Matt Waldron.
That's it, everybody.
Over at,
Good night,
over at
everybody.
the very, very, very prestigious preserve at Eisenhower or whatever.
Thank you very much.
Before we let you go, I do have a question about, you have a message with yoga, meditation, being part of the community, getting it out to the community, getting it out to people, using social media, things like that. What advice do you have for people who are trying to get their message out like us? And how have you used those avenues? How did it grow? Those kind of things.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to talk about it. So when I first got certified to teach yoga, I created this yoga account on Instagram, and for 3 years did almost nothing with it. Sorry, here's another story, but
we like stories.
My sister-in-law, Megan, whom you all know, was in a meditation class with me, and there's a guy who's on Instagram who has, 1 million followers and whatnot. And he's very vulgar. He does very brief, very, very vulgar meditations. And they're appealing, right? They resonate with people, but that's not me. And actually, Megan said to me one day, she goes, you should start doing brief meditations on Instagram and be the this guy. Nothing against him, just, something different.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, so I started doing that. And what I've landed on, kind of getting back to your question, is I do it twice a week. I do I think until last week, the most you could do on Instagram Reel was 1.5 minutes. So I do a minute or 1.5 minutes, very brief meditation. I do it twice a week. I do it Monday and Friday. And so I've got two main things out of that for me. Getting back to your advice. One is do it. I mean, nobody cares. When I first started doing it, I was like, oh my God, they're going to think I'm a joke, or oh my God, they're going to whatever. Do it. I mean, put your stuff out there and just keep doing it, because people's attention spans are so brief. So my advice to you or to anyone is do it. Put yourself out there, get it out of the comfort zone. And I've gotten to now where if I screw up on it, I just kind of roll with it. I used to seriously, and then you might be able to relate, stare at the ceiling at 3 o'clock in the morning going, oh my God, I can't believe I put that on Instagram. Nobody cares. Or I'm telling myself they don't care. Hey, look, people are so self-absorbed. People are so focused on themselves. And I mean, that's human condition. I don't mean that as a criticism. That I don't think they're worried about that stuff. So I would say, put your stuff out there. But the other thing is, and I had this happen today, whenever I'm going to read this to you real quick, if I can find it real quick. So I walked into a Christmas party here in Sherwood right before Christmas, and a young guy that I don't even know. I mean, when I say young guy, 25, I mean, I know him, but I don't know him, right? Came up to me and gave me a hug and said, oh my God, your weekly meditations have saved me.
There you go.
Unbelievable, right? So, that's
awesome.
I got today on Facebook Messenger. This is a guy who I knew in college 40 years ago. We're not in touch. We are not in touch. This morning, hey, Hearon, I've really been enjoying your meditation posts, and I'm happy to report that I'm doing it regularly. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Right? And that's the kind of thing that'll keep you going, right?
Good for you. Good for everybody. Hearon, you're the man. Thank you so much for your time.
This was
and
awesome.
Your insights. This is really good.
Hey, I'm honored that you asked me to do this. I appreciate you guys doing this. I mean, it's believe me, everybody watching this is a lot of work these guys are doing. So
we will definitely have you on again. Our limitation is Matt has an 8:30 bedtime. So it limits us to how long we can go, but we have a lot of different subjects we can cover.